sacred times. Whoever you're with, you're in the presence of the divine. So whatever you do, keep that in mind.
Most of us have grown up marking this holiday with gift-giving traditions. In kindergarten, we made fingerprint cards, clay necklaces, coupon books, and the joy on Mom's face when we gave her our crafts made us happy. As an adult, you've probably shifted toward giving more elevated presents like handmade gifts, bouquets of flowers, and mouth-watering brunch for the entire family to enjoy. Ultimately, the goal is for mothers everywhere to feel loved and appreciated on this special day. When I considered the origins of this meaningful holiday, I knew there was one place to go for historical accuracy: Martha Stewart's website. The writer Julia Ward Howe, and you'll hear more about her later, pioneered Mother's Day in the United States when she wrote a Mother's Day proclamation in 1870. She called mothers to a passionate purpose of bringing their sons home from war. She called for there to be a general congress of women without limit of nationality to gather together and form a powerful alliance for world peace. In the same era, another woman named Anne Reeves Jarvis organized a special group for mothers. The Civil War had torn the country, I couldn't read my own writing. The Civil War had torn the country apart, and Jarvis wanted to help mothers put it back together. She founded Mother's Friendship Day in 1868. Its purpose was to reconcile the difference of Union and Confederate soldiers through their mothers who played the role of healers and peacemakers. When she passed away, Ann Jarvis's daughter, Anna, and her love for her mother spread throughout the United States as she wrote letters to congressmen to make it an official day for celebrating mothers. In 1914, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed that the second Sunday in May would be the day that we would honor our mothers. Sunday, May 10th of that year became the first nationally recognized celebration of Mother's Day in the United States. Yay! While the modern day celebration of candy, flowers, gifts, and lavish meals bears little resemblance to Howe's original idea, the sentiment remains strong. The important thing is that we recognize our mothers and what they have done for us. It is a day to honor them, thank them, and remember them. So that's a little history of Mother's Day. I'm going to go ahead and pray in. Heavenly Father, I thank you for everybody here, that our love for each other brings us together every Sunday morning, that we can start our day on Sundays, that we can start our weeks, that we can finish the past week, that we can bask in each other's love. I thank you for this building and this time and this place that we can be together. And I thank you that for all the people that are here today, that we're blessed, that you protect us, that you inspire us, and that we can have the peace and that we can spread that to all the mothers in the world or anybody that's ever had a mother in the world. And together be safe and so many lives. We have a special program for you today, and I'm going to let Mari introduce it because I'm not quite sure how to introduce it.
It was from my mouth.
So this morning we have put together just a beautiful tapestry from most of from the choir and some of our community, the ladies in our community, to talk about our mothers and to express to you what they mean to us. So I will start with a piece I wrote. It's called My Many Mothers. Mother, a woman who gives birth to a child, a woman who adopts the child, a woman who raises a child. These are some of the meanings of the word mother. I have been blessed to have had more than my birth mother. You see, my mom raised me as a single mom, and in doing so, had the support of a community of women who stepped up to give a helping hand and fill in with caring love. She knew she was not alone, for God always walked by her side and supplied every need she had. These compassionate mothers have been tall, short, smell like fancy perfume, some like garlic. Some had college degrees, others could barely write. But all of them were the best teachers I've had. And this is what I've learned from them. From my abuela librada, my grandma, if you lose something, pray and you will find it. If you're sick, all you need is a shot of honey, lemon, and a little whiskey, or an herb from the garden. From my abuela Juanita, my other grandma. She was not really my grandma, but she was my neighbor and nanny. But she truly earned the title grandma. She taught me unconditional love, caring, and kindness toward animals. The cat, the dog, and yes, the monkey we had. She allowed me to explore and be free as I climbed the guava tree in the yard and grabbed my own snack. Dorisa, my neighbor. From her, I learned to pray and worship in the car on our way to school. A legacy I've carried till this day and practice now with my children. Teresita, she was my friend's mom, and I learned to sew with her, a very resourceful life skill. Georgie, also the mom of a friend. I learned there is always room for one more. As she welcomed all of us kids in the neighborhood at her house, sometimes inviting us over for dinner, even when she actually had 10 kids of her own. Really was fun. Josie, my first stepmom, a savvy business owner, taught me a woman can be strong and stand on her own. All it takes is determination. Lucy, my stepmom number 2. I learned I can be playful with my looks, but be smart to look professional when needed. As she figured out how to partially color my hair pink and cleverly hide it. Edna, stepmom number 3. She still reminds me that the key to be at peace is meditation and God. Aunt Jenny, from her I learned kindness, to give with an open heart, and in everything you do, have fun. And last but not least, my birth mother, Gladys. She was tiny, but mighty. In her later years, she was a warrior for God. With conviction and might, she would cast out the devil out of any bad situation. And it was a little scary. Her legacy is one of hard work, perseverance, impeccable manners, organization, a bit of a clean freak, but it was nice living in a home that resembled the pages of Architectural Digest. She gave to others even when she was lacking, and taught us to gracefully accept what God gives us. Her zest and love for God was admirable. Above all else, I learned from her to pray. In everything, pray. Her faith could move mountains, and because of this, everyone came to her for prayer. Although some may see this as a dysfunctional family, it was not. It was fun, and it functioned beautifully. Beautifully in love, shaping me into the mother I am now. My mom friends now are my side-by-side teachers. The new generation of Wonder Women, we are mutually our own wingmen, advisors, therapists, fitness trainers, dietitians, sisters, mothers. We all bring our mother's legacies to this beautiful tapestry created from different backgrounds, thought systems, religions, and ideas. And we are all weaving our own legacy in this journey of life, bringing forth the power within to pass on to the next generation who call us mother.
I will immediately confess that I am the weak link in this wonderful group who put this all together. I'm going to read a poem, The Invitation by Araya Mountain Dreamer, who is a contemporary Canadian woman. Araya is not her birth name. She chose it as a form of healing, and she has a fascinating bio on Google if you'd like to know more about her. But I think her poem speaks for itself. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, or for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it, or fade it, or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it is not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live, or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what, or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself, and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
Good morning. When I lived in California, my mom helped me through some hard times when I struggled to find love in relationships, and my mom shared this wisdom with me. She told me about love and that it's not supposed to hurt, and she broke it down for me by sharing that she and my dad always went to bed each night falling asleep, holding hands, and how nice it was not only to have sex with someone, but also to have friendship and trust and respect for one another. She reminded me of the gifts of love that exist in a relationship when I couldn't find that myself. She always wanted me to have what she had with my dad. When I was a little kid, my mom sang this song to me. A, you're adorable, B, you're so beautiful, C, you're a cutie full of charms, D, you're delightful, and E, you're exciting, and F, you're a feather in my arms, G, you look good to me, H, you're so heavenly, I, you're the one I idolize, J, we're like Jack and Jill, K, you're so kissable, L, you're the love light in my eyes. Well, N-O-P. I could go on all day. I could. Q-R-S-T, alphabetically speaking, you're okay. U, make my life complete. V means you're very sweet. W-X-Y-Z. Well, I'd love to wander through the alphabet with you to say how much you mean to me. There's a study at Stanford that showed that it took less than 1 second for a child to recognize the mother's voice, and that the mother's voice lights the child's brain up like a Christmas tree. Beyond just auditory areas of the brain, a child's ability to communicate socially is in a large way affected by how he or she reacts to a mother's voice. My mother sounded like an Italian love song.
My mother sounded like crashing waves. Move out of the way or get swept away.
My mother sounded like a rainstorm, sometimes steady and calming, sometimes thunder and lightning too.
My mother sounded like raindrops on a window pane during a storm, constant moving, talking, and doing. She only sat or laid down when she was completely exhausted. Hi, I'm Mary Kismerick, and this is Mothering the Mother. I never thought that I would get married and have children, mostly because I had a short fuse, and I didn't want to inflict on someone else what was done to me as a child. I had, over the years, lost boyfriends, jobs, friends, and even airplane seats due to my impatience and temper. This red-hot passion, I'll call it, I learned and inherited from my mom, and my father too, but that's a story for Father's Day. My mom was an only child of German-Irish alcoholic parents, and maybe she had a right to be angry. I don't know. She rarely talked about her childhood or her past. All I know is that she had a great deal of spitfire just below the surface that would erupt at home, sometimes in public, and got stronger as she got older. Yes, it was probably due to lack of sleep, nutritious eating, and living with an alcoholic. But I remember thinking, I don't want any of this in my life. As I grew up, I studied people and their choice of a mate and noticed that we usually marry someone like our parents, whether we like it or not. We wind up reliving our parents' marriage to a good degree. I figured that if I was to have a husband and kids, it would happen organically. I am happy with the way it turned out, and I have no regrets. But in my late 20s, I got into recovery for job burnout and depression. I was determined to bring my emotional life to peace. It was a long and winding and ultimately rewarding road, which I'm glad I took, and one that helped me to have the tools and the willingness to care for my mom and dad when they needed me. After 20 years and living 2,000 miles away from my family and learning to love and nurture myself, when my mom asked if I would come home to help her with my dad, after 6 months of prayer and spiritual counsel, I went home. I knew I could only do it with God's help. I helped my mom, helped my dad, and 2 months after I came home, he died. So then I stayed with my mom for a few months until I found it way too emotionally toxic to live with her and moved in with my aunt in the city of Chicago. I lived with my aunt for 8 years until my sister and I moved my mom to an independent living community because of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. With my mom now out of her house, I could live in her home, live close enough to care for her at the senior living community. I visited her regularly and coordinated with the staff to attend to her eating, dressing, activities, and medicine. Along with the nurses, I cared for her daily needs as if she were my own daughter. She rarely asked for help before. She was a take-charge kind of person who liked to be in full control. The only thing she wanted help with was to clean her house. Now things were different, and she needed help remembering where she was and when she was going back home. She needed help brushing her teeth and going to the restroom. And as time went on, she became more and more passive, subdued, and congenial. It was really quite lovely. She went along with requests like a happy, content child, and this from a woman who years ago questioned everything and argued with any suggestion. I got a chance to mother the one person who had done so much for me over the years, and with whom I couldn't spend more than a few hours with and not get disturbed. And in the end, what a gift she gave me. She was giving to me even when she was the one receiving. Even though we were learning new dance steps almost every day, I cherished those days, weeks, months, and years of caring for her. I could love my mother now in the way I always wished I could as a kid. She was never one for affection and hugs when she was a younger person, but once she was dealing with Alzheimer's, I could easily wrap my arms around her, and she accepted my hug. We would sit close and read, talk, watch TV, or just be quiet. This was totally opposite to how she was as a mom, always talking or having the TV blaring. Quiet was not something she reveled in at all. She was now changing. Some would say for the worse. I would say for the better. For example, I just chuckled to myself when this happened. She would often call me and say, she would call me on the phone, "This is really a nice cruise ship with the chandeliers and everything, but I'm ready to come home." And I would say, "Okay, when I get off work, I will come and get you," I said. And then another thing she would say is, or then when I would get to her room, going home was forgotten for some other problem or situation. She would often ask, "How are we affording this place? Did my dad pay for all this?" "Yes," I'd say, "he took care of it all." That would be enough of an answer to soothe her. The truth is, she financially took care of it all with her own work pension, hers and my dad's Social Security, and her 401k. It occurred to me while writing this, she did take care of herself in a practical, financial sense, and I would say I have learned and inherited that from her too. As I reminisce in the community where she lived, she and I would sometimes sit with a group of ladies, and I could see that they shunned her because she would ask the same questions over and over. Her mind was fading, and society around her was aware of it, even though she wasn't. It made me sad to see my mom in this weakened state and rejected by others, but it wasn't long until she developed a beautiful friendship with a gal 10 years older than her who also forgot a lot of things, but knew the words to every old-time song that was played on the piano. This was my mom's type of friend, a real lady who was amusing and fun. They would mother each other and took each other under their wings. What a wonderful thing to witness. It was like watching two young schoolgirls. Times like these were bright, warm spots as I walked through the often heartbreaking and devastating pain that Alzheimer's brings. I believe that divine love was shining on her, bringing back to her all the care that she put out into the world, only to get it back when she needed it most. I am so grateful that I was able and willing to be there for her. It is probably one of the best experiences of my life so far. It challenged my patience too, because as I look back, I see that I too was sleep deprived while commuting to my job in the city, researching alternative treatments till the wee hours of the night, taking her to appointments and outings while selling her house. But I was willing to go the distance, just like she did for me all those years before. I didn't care what it took. I wanted to be there for her. Only love was in my heart for her. There is this phenomenon that happens with Alzheimer's patients, where they are truly in the present moment of now. And I got to really be present with her, unlike any other time in our lives. These tender, usually quiet moments were the most profound and happiest for me. This experience strengthened me, it softened me, it brought me closer to my mother.
This story is entitled Gravesite, S-I-G-H-T. When I was 8 years old, my Italian family's field trips to Mount Carmel Cemetery were mandatory pilgrimages of faith and tradition. While my sister and I picked dandelions and played He Loves Me Not, my parents pulled weeds and trimmed the grass, and my brothers sorted out the family tree. I saw the occasional bunny hop past, as we did our own version of grave hopping. It was only natural then that when a friend said, "Oh, I forgot, today is Mother's Day, so I have to cancel our walk and run to the cemetery," that I considered for a brief moment joining her. But then I remembered that my mother considered trips to the graveyard a total waste of time. And she'd be more pleased if I got some writing done. As a little girl, I remember checking out the mini mausoleums, Lilliputian houses of the wealthy that were mixed in with the tombstones of the less well-off, and the tiny stone pillows of those not inclined to go for broke. If the people buried in the little granite houses are so rich, I would ask my mom, why didn't they build bigger houses? They don't need a lot of room, she said. They're not going to be doing much in the way of entertaining. Mother's Day and Father's Day, and sometimes Memorial Day too, would find us on our knees in Section H, Block 12, Lot 115, praying for the poor souls, though I was pretty sure they'd all gone straight to heaven. "Just wait," my mother would threaten my brother as he would burst into his creepy Boy Scout ditty. "The worms go in, the worms go out, the worms play pinochle in your mouth." But despite his inappropriate singing, my brother was the one who got to lug the sprinkling can to and from the graves because the spigot was down by the road and it was too dangerous for girls. But, you know, even with all the great adventures, I didn't like visiting the dead. The looks on my mom's and dad's faces always made me sad, and I would inevitably wipe a sniffle on my sleeve. While Mom shined the little ceramic portraits of her mother, father, and brother with her hanky, she'd admonish me out of Dad's earshot. "Don't cry," even though I'd see teardrops dribbling down her own cheeks when she leaned over to kiss my Nana's picture. "Daddy likes to follow this ritual out of respect, out of tradition. But if you honor people when they're alive, if you buy them flowers when they can smell them, you don't need to waste your time on your knees here at a gravesite. Besides," she adds, "they're in your heart. There's nothing here. They moved into your heart." Ever the pragmatist, she seized learning moments as we tiptoed through the tombstones. "Brush up on your math," she'd say. "Subtract their birth dates from the date they died. Do you see that Nano died in 1918? He died in the Great Flu Epidemic. You better look that up when you get home." So I wasn't really surprised when she chose a very non-traditional but ever so practical exit strategy. Her decision to be cremated shocked those who needed to know it really wasn't very popular. But she blew off the criticism. There were no more available plots at the family gravesite where my father was buried, and she wanted to be with him. Moving him was out of the question, too macabre and expensive. She opted for cremation, and her urn would be entombed over his coffin. I imagine my dad was conflicted when St. Peter apprised him of the fact that she'd be sharing his space. Happy to have her nearby, not so happy with her superior position. But for once, he couldn't say a damn thing. He had been gone for over a decade when her health started to decline. One day she announced that she was moving out of state to live with my sister. You've been my angel for the last decade, Mary Lou. Now, it's your sister's turn. A year later, she passed away. My sister saw to the viewing and the actual cremation. Thank God for that. Had I been entrusted with that, she might still be waiting today. Anyway, my brother delivered her to me for her final journey to Section H, Block 12, Lot 115. It was at this point in my reverie that it occurred to me that my mother would have been incensed had I wasted my time with Rosie on her cemetery jaunt, because she's not there. I don't mean in the existential sense. My mother really is not there. She is in my china cabinet. I'm sure she's ambivalent about her predicament. On the one hand, she's in a lovely living room decorated in a style very similar to her own, with lots of company and laughter in the house. But then again, on the other hand, I didn't follow her directions, and she always warned me that I was way too hard-headed and better get a move on, since procrastination was a real problem for me. On second thought, though, I realized that if my mom were here to record a new tape, she'd say, "Don't worry about the cemetery thing. Sit down and do some writing that you've been putting off. You brought me flowers when I could smell them, and I told you exactly where I'd be."
So next we have the Mother's Day Proclamation, written by Julia Ward Howe in 1870. As Al talked about earlier, it was an appeal for women to unite for peace in the world. It was a pacifist reaction to the carnage of the American Civil War and the Franco-Prussian War. The appeal was tied to Howe's feminist conviction that women had the responsibility to shape their societies at the political level. You may remember that Julia Ward Howe was an American poet and author best known for writing the Battle Hymn of the Republic in 1861 after meeting Abraham Lincoln. This is her Mother's Day proclamation.
Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause.
Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession.
As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead, Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each learning after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God.
In the name of women, in the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace.
Our next song is, you'll know it. It was written by Paul McCartney for his mother. And if you would like to join us in the chorus, please feel free.
Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be.
Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For so they may be parted, there is still a chance that they may see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be.
Let it be.
Let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light